Hello, welcome to the first video in this Microsoft Word for Practice series. We're going to get started with Microsoft Word, starting with Guided Project 1-2. This is something we'll be able to auto-grade using SimNet at the end. Just want to start this task with a huge warning for people. There's a lot of people that have used Microsoft Word in the past and they think that they're able to press print and get something that looks the way that they want it to look, and that must mean that they're at least an intermediate in Microsoft Word because it looks the way they want it to look. Nothing could be further from the truth. This is something that's completely different than it prints and it looks the way that you want. What we're really looking at this point is this is a world where we're creating digital documents. We're not printing out our resume and sending it on paper anymore. We're sending the actual Microsoft Word document to people. We are sending these files back and forth in work tasks. Sometimes we're collaborating on these documents with other people, so we're all editing the same documents. It really is a huge thing right now to make sure that you're using Microsoft Word the way that it's intended. So using the tricks that you learned to make things work back when you were in middle school that you've carried on through the years, that's not going to cut it when it comes time to use Microsoft Word properly. It's great that you can type into Microsoft Word. It's great that you're comfortable being inside Word, but don't think that you're an advanced Word user just because you've used it for things like papers and letters and you're able to make it look relatively normal with indenting and spacing and things like that. We have to make sure that it's done the proper way so that everybody else working with the document uses it in a consistent way, knows what to expect, and that you're really taking advantage of the features in Word. So with that in mind, I'm not going to expect you to know anything when it comes to this except for how to use the basics of the keyboard. And what you're going to actually see is that when we start this project, most of the typing is going to be done for us. It's going to be the proper ways of formatting that we see in this project. So let's get started. I can only give you the way that my class uses this. I realize these videos are being used pretty widely at this point. So for my students, you know that you'll have to head into Blackboard. There'll be a class for us, and when you're in our class, where there's a SimNet link along the left side, when you click that, you hop over to the McGraw-Hill campus and you'll log into SimNet, and you'll end up seeing a screen that looks a lot like this. The projects are the ones that are in blue, and I'll give you a chance to catch up, and while you do, I'm just going to give you a heads up. It might be the first time you've worked with these videos, and so I'm going to give you the reminder that you don't have to listen to it non-stop straight through. There is a pause button. So in times like this where you might be scrambling to log into SimNet and get up to where we are, just pause the video. Just give the little pause button the tap, do what you have to do, start it up when you're ready. So don't be afraid to pause the video and take however long you want to do. Not just in tasks like this where I'm saying it takes a little while, but even if you get a little stuck on the things that we're doing within the project. Pause the video, maybe go back a little bit, listen to things again. The video is designed so that you can use it at your own pace. That includes going back to rehear things as you need it. If you need more time, pause the video now. Otherwise, we'll just get started into this project. And you'll see that there's a couple things whenever you log into the project. First time, they might force you to do a best practices, where they just warn you how the whole system works. I'm going to make sure that you get through the same information right here. And there's two files in this project. We have an instruction sheet, and we have a start file. When I open up the instruction sheet, we'll open that up with the Adobe Reader, and you'll see that this contains all the instructions that are in the entire project. I have it done real small at this point so that it takes up a smaller portion, but when you look at this, you'll see the entire instruction set that is laid out for us the same way as it is in the book, and sometimes this even gets updated so that it's newer than in the book. And you'll see in this project we have an imaginary college, Sierra Pacific Community College, multi-campus community college district. This is some sort of handout that we're going to be doing regarding their online learning project. We're going to use all these different skills in order to produce this document. I'm going to turn this into something just at the top so that at the bottom we can see the actual document we're going to create. And this is where the start file comes into play. And if you're new to SimNet, this is absolutely critical that you use the start file, because if you don't, then when it comes time to upload the file over here in step 2 when you're done, it's not going to accept it. If you don't start with your own start file, which has hidden information verifying that it's you that did the work, then you're not going to be able to upload it. You're not going to be able to get credit for it. There's not going to be any exceptions for it in my class, and I doubt there will be in many others. So I'm going to click the start file for all versions, and you see we can do this both on PC and Mac. I'm going to open up in Microsoft Word, and we are going to see that they are going to give us a starter document, which will have a bunch of information already typed into it. So the document has been typed for us. You'll see Word is starting. It's going to be up to us to take those words, those plainly typed words, and turn it into something that looks really good. As this begins, I want to make sure that there's one thing that we also look out for as we're doing this, and that is the potential to cut and paste into documents. When we're talking about this start file, we actually have to make sure that you submit the original file. It's not enough just to start with the file and transfer that into some other document too. You will lose the secret codes if you start cutting and pasting between documents here. So when we start doing the start file like we're seeing on screen now, make sure you keep the original document as a whole. Don't just cut and paste things like this. We're going to have to keep the original file as we do this. Now I'm going to shrink the size of this down so that we can see the instructions at the same time that we see the document that we're creating. And you'll see across the top there's a yellow banner about protected view. Whenever you open a file from the internet, it's going to give you a warning like this, because the moment that something isn't in this protected view, you run the risk of viruses and other issues like this. It's a good idea to pay careful attention to that on most sites, but since we're using SimNet, we realize it's not an issue with a SimNet file. So I'm going to click Enable Editing, which you'll see is actually step 1 up top here. Open the online learning document so that we can modify it. Step 2, move this out of the way. Step 2 is going to say that we have to save this document somewhere. You'll see that it's added my name to the top of this document. So I click Enable Editing. Step 1 is done, and you'll see we have the document typed up. There's even a little logo on top. And we have all the information that needs to be typed. It's already typed in for us. Now it's given us a new name where it's integrated our name into it. So we can just do a File and Save. And it's going to ask us where. Good idea to choose Your Documents. And just make sure that the name is what you expected. And you can save. Now, one thing that I will mention ahead of time on this, there are ways that you can save using the OneDrive feature if you're planning on using this across multiple computers. I'm not going to cover that within the scope of this video. We'll just assume that you're saving to your Documents folder. Some people will also save to keychain drives, jump drives, flash drives, USB drives, whatever you want to call them. Wherever you want to save is fine. Just remember where you put it. So here I'm going to jump into the first step. We're 3 steps in. There's only, I believe, 16 steps to this project. So we're 2 steps down, 14 to go. And this is where we're going to actually start modifying our document. When you look at it here, the first thing that's worth noticing is that they give you a step 3, where they tell you what you're going to do, change the line and paragraph spacing of the entire document. You don't have to do what it says in the numbered step, because the lettered steps, A, B, and so on down the line, those are going to tell you how to do what the number says. So when you see the number, that's just kind of telling you what the next couple steps are going to accomplish. Don't try to do the number on your own. Wait, do the letters as you see them up here underneath. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select everything that's on the document. A lot of people would start pointing with their mouse and scrolling around and trying to cover it. One of the shortcuts they want to make sure that you know, and we're going to do this a couple times, is if you hold down the Control button on your keyboard, this is the physical button on your keyboard, and then you hold down the A, just to give the A a tap, you'll see it selects everything. I'm going to do that down in this Word document, and it will select all of that. Going up here, I'm just scrolling down so you can see more of the next step. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to click the paragraph launcher. Now, what does this mean? And here's a chance to get some vocabulary. Almost everything that you do within Word is done on these ribbons. This is the ribbon area here, and each of these is a tab. We have a File tab, a Home tab, an Insert tab, a Design tab, and so on. The tabs are made up of different groups. Here's a clipboard group, a font group, a paragraph group. You can tell the group name by this little thing at the bottom. Clipboard here, font here, paragraph. And in each of these, you'll see a little arrow thing, downward pointing arrow in the corner. This is called the launcher. So here they're actually going to give us the instructions on how to get to this. They say Home or Layout tab, Paragraph Group. So I go to the Home tab, the Paragraph Group, and the launcher is always in the corner. All you have to do is tap that, and you're going to get a ton of different settings available so that you can make your choices on what you want the paragraphs to look like. Once you've opened that, then they start telling you what it is that they want changed. Now, this is a really important concept in Word. Word is one of those things where what is the difference between a Word document and PowerPoint, Excel, and all this. If you have to sum up a Word document, it really is something that starts at the top of a sheet of paper, goes to the bottom of the sheet of paper, and it's all about how it progresses down the page. That's what most of your decisions in Word are going to be about. How do you progress from the top of the page down to the bottom of the page? And that's what Word documents are all about. Here we have the main thing called line spacing. We typically know single spacing or double spacing. People that use typewriters used to have 1.5 spacing too. Here, line spacing is one of the things that we see down here, and it's set to single. Now we could choose double spacing. We could choose 1.5. You can also choose something called multiple, where you get to set the number itself. So they're saying set it to multiple, and we're going to type in 1.2 according to step D. 1.2. Now remember, we have the entire document selected, so it's going to change the amount of space between lines to 1.2. Notice there's something called after paragraph spacing. You'll see that over here. And what this is like padding either before your paragraph or after your paragraph. So the lines within the paragraph are still going to be spaced 1.2 lines each, but you could actually say, before you give me the paragraph, I want a couple points of space before it, above the paragraph. Here we're saying after it, we want 12 points of space. And I'm just going to click that twice to get 12 points of space. And now, after each paragraph, we're going to have a little gap. So it's like having a blank line, in this case, after the paragraph. 12 is about a blank line. You could go up to the 50s, 60s, 70s. You could take a whole bunch of space like this. Often this happens at the very start of a chapter or something like that. We're just going to have essentially a blank line. And when we click OK, you're going to see the document down below radically changes. We have all these gaps. Just so you can see this happen again, I'm going to hit undo, and you see the original version. I'll hit redo. Now you see we have all this extra space. Same thing with the space in between the paragraphs. I'm going to undo it, and you see the lines are pretty tight. I'm going to redo it, and you see there's a little bit of more looseness in there. So we've changed the entire document thanks to having done the Control-A at the very start and selecting it all. So now we have spacing set up. There's something new that a lot of people have never seen before within Word, which is showing the invisible things between spaces. When you hit enter, you never see anything, but it always goes to the next line. There's a button here called Show Hide, and what it does is it shows the invisible stuff within your document. I'm going to hit that button like step number 4 up top says, and you'll see at the end of the line there's a little paragraph sign saying somebody has hit enter, and then there's a blank one. Now we actually put that right into our paragraph. We said at the end of every paragraph, give us a blank line. And you can see it has a gap down here where it makes the automatic blank line, and then it has the blank line that someone had kind of fudged by doing it old middle school style. You need a blank line between them, we'll just hit blank line. What we have to do in step 4 is we have to get rid of all of these blank lines. All you have to do is put your click your cursor right before the blank line there, the manual blank line that was added, and hit the delete button on your keyboard. And you'll see the line goes away. And according to the instructions, it says delete the one extra blank line between each paragraph, including after the title. So we have to get rid of all of these blank lines. So I go down and delete. I'm using the down arrow to get down to the next one, and delete. Go down a little further. So we're just deleting these blank lines because now it's built into the paragraphs. And as we make our way to the bottom, we'll see now we still have one blank line between, but that's because of our after spacing. Those manual ones are gone, and we don't have to worry about them because there's a lot of ways that they could cause trouble. So now we're going to move on to customizing specific sections of the document. We did Control-A before and selected the entire document. Last time we talked about paragraphs, and we talked about the spacing between them. This time we're going to get into changing the way that the letters look, the font size, and the style of the font. So again, they say the entire document, step A. We're going to use that trick that they want you to memorize here, holding down Control and tapping A, so that we select everything. Now we want to change the font to Cambria. You'll see they say Home Tab Font Group. What this is going to do is it's going to change the way that the letters look. So right now, I know here's the font drop down. And when I click the drop down, you'll be able to scroll alphabetically through the entire list of fonts that are available. And we want to look for Cambria. Luckily, they're in alphabetical order. We find Cambria here. And you can see as we hover over each, it gives us a preview over in this area of what it'll look like if we choose that font. We're going to Cambria like the instructions say. When we click it, now it's changed to this much more formal looking, more artsy kind of font. So we've made our first change, and we've got that Cambria set up. Now notice the instructions here. There's a conflict in the document. It says they change the font and font size of the entire document. We've changed the font to Cambria. It doesn't mention anything about font size. So we'll have to see if that comes back as a missing step in the end. But the best we can do is go with the instructions on the page. Now we're heading into step 6, changing the paragraph spacing. The alignment. Now they're talking about font size, styles, effects, and color. So we're going to make an awful lot of changes, but remember, the letters will walk us through this step by step. We don't have to do everything that it says up in 6 all on our own. So we're going to select the title of the document, Online Learning Information. A couple of ways to do this. Notice I clicked once because everything had been selected before. I'm going to do Online Learning Information, and all I did was drag the cursor over it. I started by pointing before the O, and I just held down the mouse button and dragged it across. Another way that you can do that, there's a couple different ways. You can point off to the side of it and click it from way off in the margin and get the whole thing. Whatever way that you're comfortable with, including ways that use the keyboard, that works. Doesn't matter how you select it, as long as you select it. And to get things into a good habit, a lot of people when they select things, they don't say they're selecting it, they say they're highlighting it. And you're not highlighting it. That's not what you're doing. You're selecting it. There is a feature called highlighting on the board. That's something totally different. So don't use the word highlighting here. It just looks like highlighting. And here, now that it's selected, let's just move on to step B. It says that we're supposed to click the Layout tab. Insert Design Page Layout. So we have a Layout tab. We click the Layout tab, and we get a different set of instructions. Remember before when we had the launcher, we were able to set the spacing, and we were able to set before and after. You'll see in the paragraph group, there's actually another way that we can do this. It doesn't have all the features of when we use the launcher. There's a little preview of what we saw before, but it does have the before and after spacing here. Now we've only selected the title, so this change is only going to apply to the title. It says change the before spacing to 36 point. So we're going to have what is the equivalent of a couple blank lines in here. You'll see as I've changed that, I'll set it down to, down here the amount of space is increasing. And the after spacing, we're going to increase, so there's a little more padding after it also. They also want to center the title. So now we've talked about moving down. We're going to also align things side to side. A lot of people at this point start hitting either the space button, so it shifts it over a whole bunch of space this way. But you'll see there's actually all these spaces in here. You don't want a ton of invisible spaces. People will think, well, we'll reduce the problem. Instead of spaces, we'll do tabs. You don't want that because you have a bunch of hidden tabs in there. That's just as bad. What you want to do is you want to actually use the centering feature in Word. So I head there. I'm going to reselect it just so it looks like what yours looks like. And you'll see in the paragraph section, there are different ways you can align things. Align it to the left, align it to the right. This one's a justified, like you'll see in printed books. Here's center, and that's the proper way to center something within a document. Use the center button. You can't imagine how many problems you'll have if you start doing spaces and then you change the size of the font and suddenly the spaces are too big and nothing's centered anymore. Just use center and it's automatically taken care of. Now, heading back down here, we still have that title selected. Now we're going to change the font size. And this gives us the instructions. Home tab, font group. Here's our home tab. Here's our font group. It says click the launcher, which remember is that little button in the corner. And you'll see, just like we saw everything that we could do to paragraphs when you use the paragraph launcher, now we're seeing everything that we can do to make fonts look different. I'm going to choose bold. It tells you in step F, choose bold. And you'll get a little preview at the bottom so you can see what each looks like. Here was the original. I switched bold so it looks like this. Then we can change the size, and they have it as a big thing. It's a title, so you have to go down to 24 on the size, and you'll see it gets really big at the bottom. And then we're going to start making it even fancier. There's a section in the middle here called effects, where you can cross things out. You can make it superscripts, like when you have a number. Usually you'll see that within math. You can do all caps. You can even do something called hidden, where the regular people don't see it. We're using something called small caps. What small caps is it uses the look of all capital letters, but the first letter is always a little bit larger than the ones that follow. Easiest to see here. These are actually lowercase as you type them, but when we have an uppercase here, it's a little bit bigger, so you can tell the true uppercase from the small caps looking uppercases. And then they're going to change the color of this too. And here's one of the features in Word that takes a little getting used to. It hasn't always worked like this. You can choose the font color, which is found over here. Set to automatic, which means black. When you click the button, you get a whole gallery of colors that you can choose. And they say we want blue-gray text 2. So you kind of have to estimate which one do you think is going to be blue-gray. And you'll hover over it, and it'll give you the name. And you want to make sure text 2 says the same thing. So we have blue-gray text 2 where I'm hovering. Now there's a whole column of these that'll start talking about lighter and darker. Doesn't say anything about that, so we'll just stick with the one at the very top, blue-gray text 2. That's going to change the font to a different color. You can compare the pure black here to that slightly bluish black up above. So we've changed the font color. And then they're going to actually have us do a little bit more with this. They want us to click the Advanced tab. Notice when you open up one of these launcher windows, you have these tabs up top. We've been using font. We can click to the next tab within the launcher window and head over to Advanced. Now we're looking for this idea of spacing. And wherever you have an arrow like this, it's called a drop-down list. So we're going to hit the spacing drop-down list, and we'll say expanded, because that's what step J up above tells us. What's it expanded by? We're supposed to type in 1.2. So we add the 0.2 there, and you'll see it says now we can hit OK. And you'll see there's a tiny little more space between the letters because we said that expanded spacing. So now the letters are a little wider apart, which is a little more title-like. Now if you look at where we're at along the project, you can see that we're almost at the halfway point in terms of space. We've done 6 out of the 16 steps, and just so you know, step 16 is like save and submit your file. So we're at about the halfway point on this document, and you can already see that if you look at the bottom here, we've got something that looks really different than when we started. So this is advancing pretty quickly. In this case, now we're going to talk about moving documents around. This is one of the saddest things that I've seen people do, because there are a lot of people that realize they want to change the order of stuff, so they retype it where they want it, and then they have to delete it from where it originally appeared. And you could see somebody do something that could normally take virtually no time at all, just 2 or 3 seconds, and it takes them 3 or 4 minutes because they don't realize that Word has cut and paste features built in. So what we're going to do is it wants us to start by selecting the last paragraph in the document, including the little mark. So I'm going to go down to the bottom. I'm going to select all of this. Remember, I just did this by holding down the mouse button before the start of the paragraph and just dragging the mouse to the end and letting go. So I've selected the whole thing, and now we're just going to cut that right out of there. We can use the cut button up here, so it's even labeled cut, and it goes away. Now we want to place it somewhere new. We're going to paste it into its new place. So we're going to move before the second line of the document, which starts definition of online learning modalities. Here's definition of online learning modalities. It says place the insertion point, which is that little blinking cursor thing. Place the insertion point before the second line. So now that's where we want it to go. We want it to go before definition of online learning modalities. And now it just says click the paste button. So when I click the big paste button here, that paragraph that was at the bottom is automatically moved up to the top. So we cut it from its original location, we pasted it into the new location. That says click at the beginning of the pasted paragraph. That's what we just typed in. And we're going to type something manually. Now notice this is the first time, we're already halfway through the project. This is the first time it actually asked us to type anything. So you can see that warning that I gave at the front is pretty serious. What they want us to type is the stuff that you see on red up there. Where are we now with online learning, ? And hit enter. Now I was touch typing. Remember, you can always pause the video if you're not as fast a typer. But you should type where are we now with online learning, press enter, and we now have what will become a section heading for this new paragraph we pasted in. And now we're going to do this one more time. We're going to select the paragraph that begins hybrid course. So we can just scroll down, find where we see hybrid course. Here's the paragraph. And we select the paragraph. Remember, select, not highlight. We select the paragraph, including that little paragraph mark at the end. And we're going to move this using a different method so that it's before the one that starts television. Course. So you see step G says we're going to move it. Now cut and paste works. We could cut, click over here, click paste, and that'll take care of the job. But there's an even quicker way to do it when you're doing a small move like this. We've selected it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click down on the mouse button, which I'm doing now, and I'm going to hold it down. You can do the same thing on yours. I'm holding it down, and you'll see the cursor's moving, and you'll actually see a little box underneath the arrow as I move it in the margin here. The cursor is changed to show that I'm dragging a big chunk of text. Where do I want to drop it? I want to drop it before the word television. So I've essentially lifted the hybrid course paragraph up. I'm dragging it, and now when I let go of the mouse button, which I'm doing now, the order changes. I'm going to show that as you don't have to do the undo and redo here. I'm just showing so you can see. Here's where we originally were. I dragged it up top. Now those two paragraphs change order. There's the original. There's our updated. So all I did was I selected that, dragged it up top, let go, and dropped it into its new place. A really quick way for moving things around. Heading over to 8. Now we're going to get into some formatting tricks using one of the most powerful tools that you really get in Word, and it's one of the most least understood ones, the Format Painter. What we're going to do is we're going to start by creating a look that we like for one of the section headings. And when we get it the way that we want it, then we're going to copy that style over to a bunch of other sections just by essentially painting it on. First, let's establish that look. Let's find what they're looking for. Where are we now with online learning, which is the one that we saw up top. I'm going to select that according to step A. So now, because I selected it, Word knows what I want to modify. Now I'm going to click the Font Launcher, Home tab, Font Group. Launcher is always in the lower right corner. And we're going to make some changes. We want the Font tab. And here's the couple changes we want. We're going to change it to size 12, so those section headings are a little bigger. Here's what it looked like before. We change it up to size 12. Step D says we're going to change the color to blue-gray text 2. That happens to be the same thing, one that we clicked before, so we might remember it's over here. And you'll see the color changes down here. We want the underline style to double underline. What does that mean? Here's double underline. Instead of underlining with a single line, it underlines with 2 lines. So we've got double underline going. And then we want to make sure that the underline color matches the text color. So here's where we change the font color. There's a separate section where we can change the underline color. So if we wanted you don't have to do this step. I'm just doing this for display. If we wanted the underlining to be orange, we could do that. It doesn't have to be the same color as the words. Here, we're saying we want the same color, blue-gray, text 2. So this is what we want the section heading to look like. We're also going to make it small caps, like we did with the main title. And here's our final appearance. Excuse me, I did small caps. We want all caps. Big difference there. Here's small caps. Here's all caps. So everything should be capitalized. It shouldn't be the small caps. Make sure you don't make the same mistake I initially did. And then it says click OK. And you'll see this line, the initial section header, looks the way that we want it. Now, there's a little tweak here, a very subtle tweak that we're going to make to some of this. They want one extra thing, the text effects and typography. Home tab, font group. Now, it might be hard at times to anticipate what these buttons look like. What in the world does text effects and typography, what could that possibly look like? Well, they told us it's home tab font group, so I'm going to go home tab font group, and then whenever you're not all that sure what something should look like, you can hover over it, and you're going to get a tip like this one says increase font size, decrease font size, and as you move through all of these, you're going to be given the opportunity to see the description that goes along with it through that pop-up. Here I finally found text effects and typography. There's really no way you could guess that this weird looking A is what they were looking for. But by using this tooltip down here, we can see that this is the button that we're looking for. So I went to home group, font group, and then I used the hover feature until I found the one that I'm looking for. So I'm going to click on that button. And we have a bunch of different features that we can add for the way that this appears. And they say, place your pointer on shadow, and you'll see a list appears. We want, according to step J above, offset diagonal bottom right. You'll see there's a bunch of different options here. And you'll start to see things as you happening behind the scenes over here. So here's inside diagonal bottom right. There's offset diagonal top left. You just have to keep moving through until you find the one that you're looking for, which happens to be the first. Offset diagonal bottom right. So this when I hover over it, says what this matches what we're supposed to do from step J. Offset diagonal bottom right. I click that, and don't click out of here. I'm just doing this so that you can see. When you look up here, this has a very, very faint shadow alongside the letters. If you look to the edge of the W, you can see a little gray off to the side. Let me reselect that. So now we have this looking exactly like what we want it to look like. This is exactly how we want section headings to look down here. But that was a lot of steps. Think of all the work that you did to get that. You don't want to have to do that constantly, especially this is just a one-page document. Imagine if you're getting like a 5-page paper. Imagine if you're getting like a 25-page work project. You don't want to have to do that all the time. So what we're going to do is we're going to use something called the Format Painter. You'll see it down here. And what the Format Painter is it's like a bucket of paint. And all the things that you do to a certain style, like all the things we did here, changing the underlining, changing the coloring of the letters, adding all caps, all of that, that's like choosing your specific style of paint. However this looks, whatever the format is with these letters, their color, their underline, their boldness, their shapes, their spacing, their everything, that's the paint that we want to use. And when we click Format Painter once, it's like dabbing our brush in that style of paint. So I'm going to do this, what step K says, with this section selected down here. I'm going to click on Format Painter, Home tab, Clipboard Group, and you'll see it stays highlighted in blue. That means at this moment, essentially our paintbrush has been dabbed with that color. We have one paintbrush load of that color that we can use. Now what it wants us to do is we want to use that paintbrush, and it's going to say we are going to select the next heading, definition of online learning modalities. Here's definition of online learning modalities. We're going to select that. Now we have the Format Painter full of paint at this point. You'll see that when we head down there, our cursor doesn't look the same. It's not an arrow anymore. See that little paintbrush that appears? We are going to paint over this plain style with what's on the paintbrush, this style up here. So I'm going to paint the style we made above onto the new one. And you'll see now, just with that one brush stroke, it looks exactly like the one above. And because all we had was a one brush full, you'll see Format Painter is no longer highlighted. So there's no background color on Format Painter. Our brush is empty. We've used our one brush full of paint. It's a lot to learn, but you can see how many steps it saves the moment that you get good at this. There's a warning here about underlining colors, but we shouldn't have to worry about that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to format the rest of these headers. So we have paragraph headings here. Here's an introductory heading. Here's another. Then you'll see when you come down here, there's things like it starts online course, hybrid course, television or teleweb course, web enhanced course. We're going to make those look fancy. So it says head to the one that says online course, which is right here. And it says select that, including the colon. So we're not taking the whole paragraph. We're just taking everything up to the colon. So I placed the mouse over here and clicked down. I'll do it again. Clicked down, held the mouse button down, dragged it over here, and got just the colon. So what we're going to do now is the exact same thing that we did in the previous assignment, the previous task. We're going to create a look for it, and then we're going to use Format Painter to copy it over to a bunch of other things. So we're going to open up the font launcher, and notice they're changing the vocabulary. They're making sure they drive this home for you. Home tab, font group, the launcher's in the lower right corner. And we're going to make a look for this, for these introductory things. Step C says change it to bold. Next, change the font color to blue-gray text 2. That's the one that we've been using all along. E, in the effects area, we'll choose small caps. and you'll see our preview over here of what it's going to look like, and we click OK. Now we have that look, and we want all the rest to look like that too. So hybrid courses, should look like that. Television or teleweb course should look like this. Again, we could select each and try to recreate this again and again from scratch, but it's a lot quicker. Let's use the Format Painter. Now, last time that we used the Format Painter, see it says in 10, we're going to use this again. Last time we used the Format Painter, we clicked on Format Painter and we got one brush full of that style. We have a couple things to do here. We have hybrid courses, television or teleweb courses, the one below that, web enhanced courses. We'd have to load up the brush an awful lot of times. There's a better way to do it. What you do is you double click on Format Painter, which is, instead of just getting one brush full, it gives you an entire paint can full of that style, and you can keep using that paint can until you're done with everything that you have to format. So you don't have to keep dipping a brush in by clicking Format Painter over and over from your original style. Double click it and it fills everything up like you have a whole paint can of that style. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to click the Format Painter, and this could be tricky for people. You might have to try this again a couple times because you're just not good at double clicking. That happens a lot when you're new to computers. I'm going to double click Format Painter by clicking the left mouse button twice rather quickly. So for me that was like a click in speed. And then you see we have the paintbrush icon, so we're ready to paint. I'm going to head up here, and it says we're going to select the other course headings one by one to apply that style. So I'm going to go down to hybrid course, and I'm going to paint the style we just made onto it, and when I let go, it looks just like the one above. And even more importantly, because I double clicked on Format Painter to fill an entire can of paint, you'll see Format Painter is still highlighted up here. So we have more paint in the bucket. I'm going to head down to the next section that they tell me, television or teleweb course, right up to the colon. I'm going to let go. And same with the final one, web enhanced course, right up to the colon. I'm going to let go. Now this is a little bit tricky. Sometimes you select a little more than you want. You apply it to the wrong group. If that's the case, there's always an undo button. If you make a mistake, you can always use the undo button. So it's nothing to stress out about. Other thing worth saying is that if it turns out you didn't get the Format Painter selected properly with a double click, because it does take a little bit to learn double clicking at the beginning of computer learning, all you have to do is go back to your original, where we got the paint from originally, where we made online course, and try double clicking again. Eventually you'll get the double clicking down. Now the last step here, I've painted everything that I want to paint. Here's the online course, here's the hybrid course, television, teleweb course, web enhanced course. All of those are already painted. I'm done, but I'm still got the paintbrush thing going. The can of paint is a bottomless can of paint. It stays until you tell it you're done painting. The way you do that, just click Format Painter button, and now it's unselected. The arrow goes back to its regular thing. We're done painting. So to sum up Format Painter, one of the most powerful tools there, you make a style that you want, you make it look exactly the way you want it, you select it. If you click Format Painter once, you get one brush full, and you can paint one other thing so it looks exactly like what you took so much time creating originally. Or you can double click Format Painter, fills an entire bottomless paint can full of that style, and you can just paint to your heart's content, and when you're done, just click Format Painter to let Word know that you're done. So one of the most powerful tools you get here. You can see on the preview over here that we're just about done with this project. Here, we're going to use some of the best features that any word processor has. Good old spell check. Where would we be without this? It's really changed the world. I am going to start by right-clicking. We can do things manually. Whenever you have a spelling error in Word, you will see the little wavy line in red underneath. So management is spelled wrong. They tell us that one of the best ways to correct things are to do it manually when we see this by right-clicking on it. So now we're using the right mouse button. You always use the left unless it specifically says to right-click. So I'm going to right-click, and you'll see up top it tells us how it should be spelled. There's an E after the G in management. If you just click the word how it's properly spelled, it replaces it for us. Things are different when it's blue. That's grammar. We're not going to look at those now. It does tell us to repeat the process for potion. It says some portion of the course meeting time. That's supposed to be portion. So here we have this wavy blue line, which means this isn't a spelling problem. Potion is a real word, but it's probably the wrong word, and Microsoft has figured it out for us. So it says potion. Now what we're going to do is it tells us click the ignore all or ignore once if there are other words marked potentially. But that doesn't apply to potion. It does want us to change potion to the correct word. So I do portion, and that completes step B. It's phrased a little tricky because you usually think the right clicking goes with this, but you do have to click to correct that. Now what it tells us in the other step is we're going to go to the very top of this. It tells us to look for all these different words that are marked in some wavy line, and it's going to tell us to ignore all or ignore once. We actually want it to say capital F for fall because that's generally how semesters are done. So we can say ignore once, and it'll take away the wavy line because we've acknowledged that word had a problem with it, but we want to keep it that way anyway. Same thing with spring. We want it to stay capitalized, so we'll ignore it this once. And then as you scroll down, you'll see all the wavy lines are gone, so all of our spelling and grammar should be fine. So checking spelling and grammar within Word is a really big deal. It's not going to be 100% perfect, but it's going to get you in the high 90s in most cases too. Here's something new that we're going to do. We're going to select the sentence in parentheses at the end of this document, and we're going to add italics to it. And there's two reasons why they're having us do this. You'll see there's a note here in parentheses. It's at the very end of the document. So I'm going to choose that thing in parentheses and get this whole section. There's two reasons that they want us to do this. One is to be able to see italics. So I can. This isn't what they tell you to do in the instruction. So they give you a choice. If you click italics here, they say Home tab Font Group. Home tab Font Group. Hover over the various things. You can see what each is. Here's italics. If you click italics, you'll see it tilts the letters. Actually makes them a little smaller too, which is sometimes helpful when you're creating documents. Gives you a little more space to work with. But one reason is so that we can see italics. The other reason, I'm going to turn that back to normal. They show you that it's not just buttons that can accomplish things. Sometimes you're typing so much you don't want to take your hands away from the keyboard. It would slow you up to go to the mouse. There's usually a way on the keyboard to do everything that you're doing that you could do with the mouse. So in this case, they say if you hold down the control button on your keyboard, that's the physical control button in the lower left corner. If you hold down that and you press the letter I on the keyboard, which I'm going to tap now, it changes it to the same italics as if you use the button here. And you'll see the button even lights up to show that it's italics, even though you use the keyboard to do it. Last couple steps, we're on the last page already. And this is another one of those things that you might not even realize exist, but this is really critical when we're talking about doing things properly using Microsoft Word documents. It says we're going to add document properties. What is that? This is something that's built into a Word document which isn't part of the visible portion of the document. There are things that are just built in that describe who the author might be. You could give it a document, you could attach keywords to this, you can do all these different things so that someone who didn't even open the document would have some preview of what's inside. Also a way to make sure that you get credit for the documents that you create. This means going into what they call backstage view. You'll notice there's one tab up here, File, which is a different color. Depending on which version, which color scheme you have for your institution's version of Word, could be different colors. I'm going to click File, and it opens up something called Backstage View. Our document is going to disappear, and we're just going to get these different settings here. And it's up to us to remember that if we want to go back, we'll use this arrow. For now, we're looking at what's happening behind the scenes. There's a lot of things like protecting your document, tracking versions, and things like this. What we'll do is, they say, click the Properties button on the right, and choose Advanced Properties. That's what step B says up above. And you get this little window that'll pop up. It says click the Summary tab. And now we can enter information about this document so that even when we are outside of Microsoft Word, we can still access this information. We'll even be able to search on this information too. For instance, we're going to give the document a title. You'll see it in red up above, Online Learning Information. We'll just click where it says Title, and we'll type Online Learning Information. Notice the period is black. That doesn't count as part of it, so leave the period out. In the subject area, they say Online Learning. And then currently my name isn't as author because I'm the one who owns this copy of Microsoft Word. They have an imaginary author to use. So type Tanisha Morris as the author. And it's really important to realize, we are not changing what we see in the document. When I hit OK, which is going to be the next step, when I hit OK, nothing's going to change in the document. You're not going to see any of these things we just typed appear there, but they are hidden behind the scenes within this document itself. So I click OK, and properties will start changing. You'll see the author has been changed to Tanisha Morris. The title appears here, Online Learning Information. Now all we have to do is hit the back arrow to get back to our document, and you'll see nothing has changed. All that stuff that I typed isn't there. That's just behind the scenes. So now everything looks exactly the way we want it. They just say save the document. So I hit the little save button up there. If you're comfortable with doing save like this, that's fine too. Whichever way works. There's also ways to use it with keyboard shortcuts and such. Whatever you're comfortable with. I will mention one extra thing for people that are going to be submitting this in ways other than SimNet and Blackboard. If you're going to be submitting to SimNet or Blackboard and you've been working within OneDrive, make sure you do a save as. This doesn't apply to most people, but just in case, if you've been using OneDrive, do a save as, and you have to, in order to submit your project, you're going to have to save it to either your Documents folder or your Keychain drive or whatever, something that isn't OneDrive, just for submission time. All right, so that only applies if you've been using OneDrive. If you've been using Documents folder like I recommended at the start, don't worry about that. Doesn't apply to you. So I've saved it. Doesn't hurt to save again. They say close the document. So I'm going to close the document. And all that's left is to upload the project and submit it for grading. So we're going to go back here. Here's the Upload My File button. And it is time to see how well we did. Did we follow all the instructions? Remember, there was a question where it told us to change the default size, but it didn't tell us to change it in the instructions, so we'll have to see how that turns out. That wasn't actually listed. So you'll notice I'm not in Microsoft Word right now. I'm just uploading the file. I even have a Firefox logo in the corner. When I hover over here, notice it actually lists the author of the document here. It gives the title and the subject that we typed in. We're not even in Microsoft Word. Those things that we entered that were behind the scenes information, it's accessible so that we can get the additional information about our documents without even opening them up. So here's one of the benefits to what we did in that last step. So I'm going to choose that document that we just made. I'll click Open, which uploads it to SimNet, and it's going to ask you, are you ready to have this file graded? I'm going to say yes, submit the file. Now I really don't know what I'm going to get because I don't know if that font size thing is going to catch up with me. There was no instruction, but luckily it turns out that the default size was just fine. By following all the instructions, you too should end up getting a 100 out of a 100 here. And just as a quick tutorial for those of you that might not have gotten 100 out of 100, you'll see that anything that is correct is in green. So I see all these green numbers showing that I got something correct. And when I open it up, it shows each step. If something comes in blue, that means you got some of the steps right, but not everything. You can open up the ones that are in blue, you can trace your errors, and correct whatever it was that you did. Reopen your document in Word, make the corrections that you see. Sometimes you just have a blatantly red incorrect option. If you have something in red, then you're going to have to do that entire step. You miss something as a whole. In my class, I don't know if this goes for everybody else, but at least in my class, you have 3 chances to submit your project. So if you didn't get a 100 first time, you've got 2 more times to go through these corrections that they give you and make that last-minute correction. Over here is what your final product should look like. This isn't a copy of what you submitted. This is the what the final product looks like if you got everything perfect. So you can compare it to your own, and that'll help you get your 100 grade in. You can even see that here, I'll say step 6, 6D, click the center button. You can see up here where 6D is shown so that you can tell that 6D is supposed to occur somewhere around here. So you can use this to figure out what you did wrong if you didn't get a 100. And if you did, that's great. If you didn't, at least in my class, you have 2 more chances. Get as good a grade as you can, get it in, and you're done with the introduction to this main concepts in Microsoft Word. Remember, it's a digital document. It's not about pressing print. There's a lot of wrong ways that we could make it look like what the final version is supposed to look like. Remember, there were manual blank lines between here. We could have left those and faked it, but what happens if we change the sizes? It's all going to look wrong. We could have hit a ton of spaces or a ton of tabs to try to make this look centered ourselves. What happens if we change the sizes of the font? It's not going to be centered anymore. We've taken an approach to doing things the right way. We've even made it worth it in a way, because when you get a section header that you like, you can select it, click Format Painter, and paint another copy of it. Same thing if you have things that you want to copy a bunch of times, you can double click the Format Painter, paint it to your heart's content along the sides. So we're making it worth your time to do it right by speeding up the things that you would have had to do manually and would have taken an awful long time. And remember, we added that extra concept that there are things behind the scenes, like the title, the subject, the authors, other features like that that give you a good chance to catch up with what you were doing in some sort of invisible area, so that when you go to look for these documents, that can happen a lot faster too. So it's not about what it looks like when you press print. You can get things to look a certain way doing a lot of different approaches. The moment you start sharing it with a coworker and you have all these middle school good enough methods that you've been using through the years, it's going to be obvious you don't know what you're doing with Word. So you've taken a big step to be on the right path for Microsoft Word at this point. Hopefully, through the coming videos, if you hang with me through the next couple chapters, you'll truly make it up to intermediate, and you'll be able to produce documents that you'll be proud to show co-workers and bosses and instructors in your various courses. So we're on the right path now. If you need more time for your hundreds, go for it. Otherwise, I'll see everybody in the next video.